You're listening to TFM.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. Welcome to TFM's local watering hole, and if it's a little noisy, I complain. Don't complain to me. I'm sorry, but the velociraptors are just all over the place today and just misbehaving, and so just bear with us. And I'm so excited to have with me, as she is every single week, the one, the only, Christy Morris.
Well, thank you very much. I just got here after prancing through a field of dead flaming locusts.
It's so the worst. You know, they just ruin everything, put things on fire, create forest fires. It's awful.
Yeah.
You know, I don't even know if in that beginning I even said that this is the 602 Club. And I don't remember if I even said my name is Matthew Rushing. And that's how obnoxious the velociraptors have been today.
Yes. Alpha, beta, blue.
Stop it, guys. Come on. Well, we are excited. We are at the end of something, which is Jurassic World Dominion, kind of wrapping up the Jurassic series here. And so we're going to be talking about this latest film and the last one. But before we dive into everything I think this movie has for us to cover, we want to say thank you to those that are listening. We really appreciate it. And if you like the show, spread the word. You know, share us with a friend. Share us on social media. You know, give us a star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Make sure you're subscribed so you'll get the shows as soon as they drop. You can also find us and follow us over on social media, places like at the 602 Club on Twitter, or we're on Instagram at the 602 Club TFM. So please find us and follow us there, interact with us. Share with your friends. You can also find us on Facebook with the entire network at facebook.com/TrekFM, and the listeners only discussion group you can join and talk to listeners from all over the world about all of the different podcasts we're doing. Trek.fm is, of course, our website. And, of course, there's a contact section. Maybe you'd like to send us an email. Yeah, people still do that sometimes. So, and then last but not least, we want to say go over to patreon.com/TrekFM and become part of our team. Make sure that all of these wonderful podcasts keep coming to you each and every week. It's very expensive to do all of this, and we can't do it without listeners just like you. Every little bit helps, and so go to patreon.com/TrekFM. So, Christy, before we even get to anything that's just on the outline, I just wanted to know kind of how you were feeling coming into this, because, you know, for the majority of people like you and I feel like we've kind of grown up with the Jurassic series. So how are you feeling coming to the end?
I was excited. Well, I'll start by saying initially when I saw the preview starting for this movie, I thought to myself, really, we're doing another one? You know, with the Jurassic Park movies, although I grew up watching the first one not long after it came out, and then every subsequent one after that, it starts to feel a little like they're just going for the cash grab, possibly, until, and I don't know if you felt the same way, Matt, until in this preview I saw for the first time that they were bringing back the big three.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I said, well, if it's got Jeff Goldblum and if it's got Alan and Ellie coming back, now I'm interested. Because it clearly wasn't just another piece added to the pie. Sure. It was trying to honor what came before it and merge the two together. So, what about you?
Yeah. You know, I mean, I obviously, like you, I think I was, you know, it's like, I think the original film was, I was probably 14 for it, you know, so it was just like right in the right wheelhouse. I grew up loving dinosaurs. You know, I wasn't nuts about The Lost World. It's fine, but I don't think it's a great film. 3 is pretty terrible, I think, as a movie. And then I wasn't really like re-engaged, I don't think, until Jurassic World came out. And man, that movie took the world by storm, and I think just really shocked people and kind of, I think, reignited people's love for the series and being excited. You know, I thought that was a great movie. I enjoyed Fallen Kingdom, and so I was excited to come into this. And I think my excitement was in part with what, you know, you just said, which is this seemed like a movie where the original 3 cast members were going to be big parts of this film and kind of like bringing everything full circle. And, you know, to me, yeah, that was 100% exciting. So coming into the movie, though, and coming to an end, I heard a lot of people complaining about this coming out of the movie, which is they were expecting this movie to be more about kind of like humans and the dinosaurs living together and all of that. And I was wondering, before we even get to what Colin Trevorrow has to say on the subject, how do you feel about that? Is that what you expected in this movie, or did you have really any expectations other than, you know, the fact that you knew that the big 3 were going to be in this with our cast members from the Jurassic World series? You know, where were you in that? And did that bother you that's not kind of where this movie is going?
So I really didn't fixate on that when I saw the preview. I was more just excited that they were going to have the big 3 back and that they're putting them in the same movie together with Owen and Claire. So I wasn't really focused on that, but I also like that they didn't go that direction of having dinosaurs and humans regularly coexisting, because I don't see how that would actually be possible anyway. If you're really looking at realistically how that would work.
Sure.
They're wild. They've got way more different sizes and shapes and claws and things. And they're going to be all over the place. And humans have to have some kind of order. That is never going to work.
Right. Well, and I am right there with you, because that's not what I expected at all either. One, there are not that many dinosaurs, you know, coming from the 2 islands we've seen, Isla Nublar and Sorna. There just aren't that many dinosaurs that they've created, right? And, you know, Trevorrow said that really what he was going for was this kind of realism of, like, you know, dinosaurs wouldn't be everywhere all the time. You know, and that they would be kind of rare in the sense of the same way, you know, if you go to places where tigers exist, he uses this as an example, you don't just see them walking down the street much. We know there are tigers there, but it's very rare that you would see one just kind of like walking down the street, right?
Yeah, they would be in their habitats.
Exactly. And so the idea of kind of keeping our relationship with these wild animals much more grounded, and that in some ways too, you know, this would be more of the idea of like, yeah, a dinosaur might, you know, run out into the street in a foggy night, you know, on a back road, or, you know, they might invade your campground. And that, like, dinosaurs in the real world would be more like us, like when we think of like bears or sharks. Then, you know, we watch out for them, but it's not like a common occurrence. Yeah. So, yeah, I thought all of that made much more sense. And then, too, I thought with his thought process was, you know, in Jurassic World, the very first one, Claire says no one's impressed by a dinosaur anymore. And the idea that, you know, with them being loose in the real world, you did have the opportunity to run into one, possibly, that would be proven false. Like, people would still be in awe of seeing a creature like that if they existed today, if they happened to run into one, you know.
Or in terror.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, like the prologue for the movie that got released had the T-Rex, you know, stomping through a drive-in movie theater. You know, so if that happened, obviously it'd be terrifying. And so, which apparently there's footage like that where it was meant to be a part of the original film and they cut it out for time and everything. But I'd love to see the director's cut, basically, of like with all of that. I think that would be really fun to see back in the movie because that's a fun scene anyway. So, yeah, I personally for myself, I'm with you in the sense I didn't have expectations going in as to that. And I think this movie did feel more like almost a planet Earth type of thing, you know, which he watched for inspiration of seeing the animals in their habitat, you know, the fact that they don't really run across human beings all the time, you know, like it's not like you're walking out the door and dinosaurs are there. Again, part of that is that there are so few of them. And even though they've been spread across the world and there are breeding, you know, places with them now, it's much more akin to the exotic animal, you know, underground that we have even now with things like tigers and lions and, you know, deadly snakes and that kind of stuff. You know, all of that stuff happens now with, you know, wild animals. And, you know, during the pandemic, we all watched, you know, what happened with Joe Exotic and his group, right?
Yeah.
We all became much more aware with the Tiger King. But it's still very rare in comparison, you know. So, yeah, I thought that this really worked for the movie quite well. And so, yeah, I was just kind of surprised to see people really frustrated that was not, I don't know, I just never expected that. So maybe I'm just on a whole other level, which, you know, I'm a little crazy, so.
Well, and I think you could play it both ways. I mean, I think there are people that are going to be for that style of having them living amongst us, and then people that, you know, feel like we do, that having it more grounded and realistic to what like endangered species are like for us currently is better.
Yeah.
I like that more grounded approach. And it, you know, obviously you do too. And I think that it's an interesting way of looking at it that we're not used to with dinosaur movies. And apparently was more akin to what Crichton wrote in the books.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that you say that because I was talking with a friend of mine behind the scenes, just our personal text messaging and stuff. And with what this movie, and we're going to talk about it in just a second, I think it has a lot to say. It felt very much in line with where Crichton went with the very first novel. Like if you've read Jurassic Park, the book is very much about the way science is being used in all of these type of things. And I mean, even the portrayal of characters, you know, in the original novel, Hammond is not a good guy at all. He is an egotistical maniac who is, you know, hell-bent on making money with dinosaurs. You know, he dies. Spoiler alert at the end of that movie too. But
he's still
you're happy to see
in the
him.
movie.
Yeah, exactly. But you're happy to see him go in the book because things are much more serious, and the thought process behind it is much more, I think, where this movie goes. Where again, I think this movie, as I mentioned, has a lot to say. And it seemed to be very topical and hitting on a lot of things that we've seen over, I would say, the last 5 years. And some of them even closer than that. But I was really interested. One, this movie kind of, I thought, touched down on the idea of the effect of lockdowns on kids. And Maisie is really struggling with that because, and look, Owen and Claire have perfect legitimate reasons for wanting to keep her, you know, basically locked down. Because she is in terrible danger. And they're proven right, obviously, with what happens to her in this film. But the effect on her is detrimental. She only has them to talk to. She doesn't have interaction with any kids her age. She doesn't have any experiences outside of the world that she's had, where she's been very cloistered from, being in her grandfather's house, which we saw in Fallen Kingdom, to now just kind of, she lives out in the woods with Owen and Claire, and they love her. They treat her like she's their own kid. But at the same time, the psychological effects on this poor child are terrible. And it goes very much to what we've seen in our own world, which, you lock kids up for a year and they can't do anything and have no interaction with the outside world. It's not good for them.
Exactly. No, I think you're 100% right that that's a reference to that. And that it does prove, I actually remember learning in sociology class that is a vital thing for humanity, to our development, also to our ability to know social norms, and to, be able to function as members of society at large as you get older. And I have a friend whose child has speech delays because he was having to do virtual school for so long. And like you said, clearly in this situation as well, there was a needed reason for that for a time, but then also there has to be some kind of balance. And that Maisie was saying to them, I need something more. And they even acknowledged to each other, we've got to figure out a solution, because otherwise she might go a lot further than the bridge.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. And it was just, it's one of those things where it's like, it's not a massive thing, but it's a point in which the movie is I think pointedly saying something about our experiences, over the last few years, to which I think the way this movie is a repudiation of much of the scientific community, especially over the last few years, is I don't think it's subtle. I think, what's interesting, Alan Grant says that science is about the quest for the truth. And yet I think what this movie shows, and what much of the Jurassic Park series from the beginning, from the book, science is here about people wanting and being used for the idea of more money and more control. Legitimately, what do we have here? We have a lab accident that has effects on the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
About the locust.
Yeah, that, and even the dinosaurs themselves, right? These, especially the ones that had been genetically altered and specifically were being made for being weapons and stuff. This is, if that's not topical, the idea of this type of thing and science being misused in this way, I don't know what is. And the fact that, again, Crichton was talking about this in the original Jurassic Park novel, and I think this movie, maybe even more so than the original Jurassic Park, but with Spielberg, I think this movie is really hitting hard on that subject of the way science can be misused because of people's desire for money and more power.
Well, and then also it even reminds me of just the whole story of how something can get away from you, how it's like Frankenstein's monster, where they had good intentions, except then they get into playing God. Even if you don't believe in God, it's just, that you are messing with things that you don't understand, and it leads to catastrophic results. And I do think you see that over and over in this movie, like you're mentioning, and, showing that things like cloning, what results it could have, for example, on a human being, where she's going, I don't even know who I am.
Yeah.
That whole question that a kid who is adopted might have about what their biological parents are like. She's going through on a whole nother level of, do I even have a mother, or was I just from a petri dish?
Yeah, no, I think 100%. Those are the type of questions that get raised. And it just, I think that the idea, the scientific community specifically does kind of play into very much, I think, one of the themes of the film, which is the responsibility for our actions, the intended and the unintended consequences of those, right? Mm-hmm. And how we deal with that. Because absolutely, like you said, one of the big things here is that we see this idea of looking for more control, and using genetic resources for that with the locusts, and the unintended consequences that have happened with that, which could cause catastrophic meltdown of the food supply, which is a repudiation in many ways of, I think, the big tech and the scientific community together. The way in which, these two things are working together to look for more control over our lives. Mm-hmm. And the way that they use the enchantment that we have with things that they create to help us overlook their real motives. It's this game of smoke and mirrors, right? Mm-hmm. Where they're like, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain,
right,
pay no attention to the dinosaur behind the curtain. And the way all of these themes, I think, play together here in the film is really, really smart. Dotson is literally dressed like Tim Cook from Apple, basically. So it's kind of hard not to see what Trevorrow is going for here. But I think what he's pointing at are things that are super dangerous, because there are people who are previously in big tech that are longing to have more control over our food supply. And you could find it in the news. Previous Microsoft owners, they're big on this stuff. It's kind of scary. And so all of these things together, I think are actually pretty terrifying.
Yeah. Well, and it reminds me too of the whole premise of movies like iRobot, where you are trained to start bringing more and more advanced technology into everyone's home, and then it gets used against you. They're doing the same kind of thing here, where they're showing that, biosin seed is going to be better for your crops, except for then they are killing off everything that's not biosin seed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you don't even have a choice anymore. It's the only thing available.
Exactly. And it, again, it's that kind of, they're using our enchantment with things to be able to push an agenda, right?
Until suddenly it's too late.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And they're using crises for their benefit, right? Like, let no crisis go unused, is the saying that's famous. Or it's close to that, it's a paraphrase. But, Dotson is talking about the idea of using crises for problems they've created, quote unquote problems they created, so that they'll have more control over the food supply, so that basically they'll have more control. Like this whole thing is about people in power looking to increase their own power, and the control that they have over the systems. And so to me, that's another, I think if you've been paying attention over the last few years, these are the things that we've seen happen. And it's ridiculously and utterly terrifying. And it's scarier than the dinosaurs, honestly. Mm-hmm. That's the thing I think that this movie kind of shows, is that mankind has propensity to do things that are more terrifying than a T-Rex rampaging. Really, with the amount of evil that we can perpetuate because we're desirous of basically being in control of things to a godlike level. At least we're trying. And that's I think the whole Jurassic series has been about from the start.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's about the all of these things combined together. It's about the want for control, coupled with the good intentions of some people that want to just advance our knowledge, and use the science for good. Then there's the people that want to use it for evil, and for more and more control. And it's amazing when you think about it that we haven't completely annihilated ourselves yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I think that is something that is important here to realize, is that Charlotte Lockwood, that's exactly what she was trying to do, right? She was the one scientist there at InGen working, alongside of everybody who's, doing this genetic research to create dinosaurs. What is she doing with it? She's trying to solve problems like medical issues and,
like genetic diseases.
Exactly. Those type of things. Like, that's her desire, is to use this power, not to just make more money, but to actually benefit the world, on that type of level. And of course, she succeeds in doing so. And so I think that's the thing I love about the film, is that it does show that there are people that are looking like a Grant, or a Charlotte. They're looking for the truth in science, right? And the way that can teach us about ourselves and help us. But I think the beauty of the film and the disappointment in the film, in the sense that it shows that there's more people who are more interested in using that for control or money, mm-hmm. than those things. And that's the thing that I think is so sad. And that asks a larger question then, which is, what's the best way to make a change? And that's something that I thought was really interesting about the movie, because what do we do in the face of something that's wrong or even evil? I mean, is it okay to just stand by and do nothing, or and then if we're going to do something, how do we do that? Because I was really interested about, the movie kind of shows like the idea of like civil disobedience type of thing, or working within the system, or, and that different people are trying different things, and there isn't necessarily a truly clear-cut answer as to what the best way is, but it is clear that people are very interested in doing something rather than nothing. Mm-hmm. But it is important what that something is, too.
Yeah, I think that they definitely show you, especially through the characters of Ramsey that works for Biosyn, and betrays Dodgson, as well as with Kayla, that if you see something that is wrong and do nothing, you're allowing it to happen. And I'm so glad that they had Kayla then become a bigger character in the movie and get to come back and tell Owen, I did see your daughter before at the airport. Mm-hmm. And I looked the other way. But then when I came across her picture again, I realized doing nothing wasn't enough.
Right.
And that was a beautiful moment, because you're seeing that, like, it struck her heart, that it made her realize the kind of mm-hmm. person she really is, and that it actually makes her change her ways moving forward. Because she's like, I realized I can't be one of those people that just turns the other way and goes about my own selfish needs.
I know, and it was leading me to think of, too, obviously at the beginning of the film where Franklin is talking to Claire and Zia, where he's saying, and both he and Zia are telling, we can't keep doing this. This isn't really helping. We're not actually, we're helping, but it's not enough. And it's not the way we should be helping, right? This rating of these places and everything. Yeah, we are doing some good, but it's not really doing the most amount of good we could. And I just, the question there, I think, is just so valid, because we are all living in a world where we see wrongs happening. And the question becomes, how do we affect the best change, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a question that the movie, it definitely lays before us. I think it shows different ways to make that happen. But I come to the fact that a lot of these people in the best ways to make this happen are on the legal level, and I mean legal in all ways, not raiding places and all those type of things. But I mean, at the very end of the movie, what are Malcolm and Ellie and Alan doing along with Ramsey? They're going to Congress to present their findings and then working to make a lasting change on a national level here, and then of course the global level, of course, where the UN marks that as a sanctuary, and so like I think that's really, really neat that this movie is asking really big questions like that. And then the last one I come to, and I just really loved, like, for Trevorrow, he said that this movie to him is really about an allegory for us and nature, but also us and us. Like, we as people, we have to find a way to coexist with one another if we want to survive and thrive. And I think the beauty of this is it really kind of puts, like, look, dinosaurs and man living together, if they could find a way to do it, the whole point of the film is to say, look, we need to learn to live together on all sides of the aisle, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if the most inexplicable things can learn to live together, in the allegory of this film, then we should be able to find a way to do that as well. And I was really moved by that as a theme in the movie, because we are at this kind of crossroads where it feels like people don't want that, like they feel like that's impossible, but it has to be, or we're going to end up completely destroying ourselves.
And looking at what we still have in common, what the bigger issues are than just whatever quabbles we have with each other, that there are general things that we all want and need, and that we share that, that we all need to eat, that we all deserve to be able to have a decent place to live. These are all things that we have in common that we need to focus on so that we can then be able to coexist together.
I think I really like, the way you put that, like, and I think even the way the movie, shows it is like, the velociraptors, right? With Blue and Beta, we have this thing, we have this picture there where we can see how these characters aren't that different. In the sense, like, they're just trying to protect their families, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's that correlation, like you said, that beauty of the thing that actually makes us more similar than not.
Mm-hmm. It's still a mother and her baby.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. And it's the same thing that we then have to do with one another. Mm-hmm. I love that, Christy. I think it's beautifully put. So
I did want to add, while we're on that really quick, just a moment about the dinosaurs themselves.
Oh, sure. Yeah, of course.
There were some things in this movie that they actually corrected that came from the paleontologists that they worked with, that I thought were interesting. And then, my husband, the dinosaur lover, also reminded me of that. One thing they didn't correct that apparently was driving him crazy was they kept calling it Giganotosaurus. And it's actually pronounced in the paleontological community Giganotosaurus. So that was a little annoying. But for those of us that don't know that's the difference, it didn't really bother me. But they did actually go back, and I don't know if you remember from Jurassic Park 3, they had killed off the T-Rex, saying that there was a Spinosaurus was the bigger predator. And there was actually a lot of fan contention about that wouldn't have been the case. So in this movie, in that final fight between the Giganotosaurus, the T-Rex, and the other dinosaur, I don't remember its name, they actually then have the T-Rex wake back up.
Yeah.
I like that, that they brought that back and fixed it, and made some fans happy. And then the only other thing I wanted to share was that the Dilophosaurus was the dinosaur that had the neck frill. I love that they brought that back from the very first Jurassic Park.
Yeah, that was great.
But apparently Crichton made up the fact that those could spit venom and had a neck frill at all. Apparently they did not, in actual historical evidence, have either of those bodily features.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
So it's more fun.
I wanted to ask you it because obviously we talked about this, and it being a big deal, them bringing the big three back, and so how do you feel then that they did with Ellie and Ian and Alan being obviously such a huge part of this film, and the storylines then to kind of bring this to a close?
I was so happy. First of all, I think that everyone has been waiting since the very first Jurassic Park movie for Ellie and Alan to be able to be a couple. It did not make sense that they broke them up before and had her go off and marry someone else and have kids with them, because these two characters were so similar. And you could see from the very beginning of the whole series that they had this connection, and then had shared trauma because of everything they went through here with the park. So now to finally bring it full circle, like you were saying, and have them back in the movie and finally be able to be together, it's like what they and the audience have both been waiting for since the very first movie. And I mean, I think everyone absolutely loves the character of Alan. It's like he is the mainstay of Jurassic Park. There's even that recognizable musical theme that plays whenever he comes on screen. That is the Jurassic Park theme. He's like the Indiana Jones of this series. I mean, he's even got the hat.
Yes.
So seeing them back was amazing. I'm glad they got them together. And then also I'm a huge fan of Jeff Goldblum anyway. So, but his character of Ian, I like that he gets some redemption, although they still kind of make him out to be a little bit of a quack who's out there preaching all of this pseudoscience. He is actually at heart a good guy.
All the things you touched on, I think, are the things that make this work. One, I mean, the way these characters are used in this movie is 100 times better than anything we got in the sequels for Star Wars. I think this makes these characters feel important to the series. And the fact that, for them, this is kind of about, they're such big drivers of the story. I mean, with Ellie specifically, and, obviously the fact that, her and Ian have been working on this together, with the whole biosin angle and, and then bringing Alan in and making him a part of this. And, in some ways, I think he gets to live his dream, by coming kind of face to face with a raptor in the way he does. I think that's awesome.
Did you like the raptor jokes about, is that a dinosaur strapped to your shoulder?
Yeah. I thought all that was great. I think if you're going to bring characters back like this, you have to make them matter to the story. And I think they absolutely made them matter to the story so that it didn't feel like, oh, that could have just been anybody here. The fact that these three characters would have such a vested interest in all of this, especially since, they are in many ways, even though they don't know it, connected to the villain of the story. They are intricately connected to that character and in ways that I don't even know if they're necessarily aware of, right? And so all the way back to the original Jurassic Park. So, and yeah, I'm with you. Having Alan and Ellie finally be able to come together as a couple the way that they always should have been, I think makes fans really happy, and her and Alan and Ian going to the Senate to finish this once and for all. I mean, again, there's this redemption arc for them in that sense that they get to finish what they started, and to put things right finally after all of this time. So, I mean, I 100% agree with you, and I think I couldn't have been happier that they were brought back the way they were, and that I think it plays out beautifully in the film. So I'm just glad I didn't have to deal with, massive locusts, because that was disgusting. So,
but it was such an awesome scene having Ellie and Claire have to go and reset the switch manually, and go get through all of the burning locusts and then waking up more of them. Oh, it was so funny.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the fun thing, is that they also found great ways to interact the characters from the two casts, and I thought that was, and you got this feeling almost like, that by bringing the two generations together, that they will be together for the rest of their lives, right? That they will be friends, that they will get together and hang out. They've had this experience that has bonded them, and so I love that. And I'm really glad that we continued, and I think we kind of found a way to bring, again, full circle, Owen and Claire and Maisie's stories, that, we're able to find closure for those stories. And I specifically, when I think of Claire and the fact that what Ellie says to her, where she says, we hold on to regret and we stay in the past. What matters is what we do now. And I think for Owen and Claire, that's kind of part of their story here. Like, they have to let go of what happened, and they need to find a way to enact a change, because they do they do feel guilty for their involvement in Jurassic Park. Claire mostly, and so I think I loved that. And I also loved that we didn't have that thing where, are they or aren't they? No, Owen and Claire are a couple now. Like, they're not going anywhere. They're there together, and they love Maisie like their daughter. And she is, she even calls them, like, at the end of the movie, they're her parents. These are her parents. And she can see the way in which they love her and want to protect her, even if it's frustrating for her sometimes. So all three of them, I thought they did a great job of bringing back, and then utilizing well, I thought, for the story.
Yeah, for me, the biggest part of that whole piece of their story was showing also for people that have been adopted or fostered, that people out there can love you just like you are their own biological child, and don't have to have any blood relation to you whatsoever. And that it can be mutual. That, she's now learned her own origin story, Maisie has, and has accepted the fact that she does have a biological mother, but that's not who's been raising her now. And that she does have two great people to look up to who are taking good care of her. So I almost cried in that scene where I think the nurse says to her, I'm just going to get you patched up and then I'll send you home to your folks. And it shows Claire and Owen. I was like, oh, they're her folks.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I think what I also really enjoyed is the fact that, the storyline with Maisie and her being a clone of her mother, or I mean, really just a clone of Charlotte. It's not really her mother, really, in the sense that what we would know, but was really interesting. And again, I think what was beautiful about it is how it ties into all the thematic elements, of the way in which we use science and what we're doing with it and all of those things. But it also, her quest to find out who she is and her desire to understand who she is as a person. Is she just the same person or is she different? And I think, the beauty of this is we've all kind of experienced this as Star Wars fans and the idea of the clones and how they are all different because of their experiences and who they interact with as a Jedi and all of those kind of things. And so I love that she gets to realize that, she is her own person. I mean, what Claire says to her is so cheesy, but it's so true. You're the only you who's ever existed, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, she might be genetically almost the same person, almost the same, like a copy, of Charlotte, but she's not even genetically the same anymore.
Right.
Because of alterations that, Charlotte made to her so that she wouldn't have the genetic disease. But then again, who she is different as well because, of the experiences she's had in life. So it's the nature, nurture, all of those things that come together and that, is it nature or nurture? Mm-hmm. Yes. It's not an or, it's both. So, and her being able to come to that I loved it. So,
yeah, no, I'm with you on that 100%.
Well, and two, the idea of redemption, I love plays out, like you said, it's not just for like Claire and Owen, but, Dr. Wu getting that and Kayla as well as character. And so I love how, again, I feel like this movie is doing such a great job of reinforcing the thematic elements over and over again with different characters in really good ways. And so I like that a lot. Quite interestingly, our villain is one that brings it full circle because Dodson, who we met in the original Jurassic Park, who hands the can to Dennis, I think, is just phenomenal. And so, one, was that super surprising for you to have that? And how did it end up working for you to kind of, again, bring this full circle?
I have to admit, I did not remember this guy. So I found out after the fact that he was in the first Jurassic Park as the person that handed the can to Dennis. But I did think that was cool once I found out that that's what they did to furthermore link the two films and all of the films together and to bring somebody into this that is not necessarily representative of just one era of the Jurassic films. Yes, they're bringing him back from the first one, but I'm glad that they didn't go with somebody that was only in the Jurassic World previous two films to continue as a villain. No, they're saying we are putting all the pieces together as a group of 6. So I thought that was really cool. I thought that the actor did a great job. Campbell Scott. And I love that he is embodying exactly what you were mentioning earlier, smoke and mirrors. I even said early on in the movie to my husband, it's really weird how fidgety he is. And he's constantly got a stick of gum in his mouth and his hands are moving. And, you can tell like he's hiding something or he's anxious about something, maybe at his core feels what he's doing is wrong, but that he's got to keep going anyway. So,
yeah, it's interesting that you talked about the idea of like his portrayal and everything. And what I kind of saw it as is the person who is so desirous of control. He's basically like a massive child. Like when things don't go his way, he literally threw a temper tantrum.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's somebody who's amassed so much power and so much money that he's just used to everything going his way. And when that doesn't happen, you know, he just moves on to the next thing. And it's because he's amoral. He has he doesn't have any morals or any compulsion about doing anything as long as it benefits him. And so I thought that was really awesome. And I also enjoyed, like you said, I think he's representative of everything that's kind of been against the Jurassic system from the beginning, which is people have always been trying to steal this technology to utilize for their own benefit, which, you know, and absolutely he's part of that. So I loved just 100% with you that this was a great choice, and I absolutely love that. Again, it's connecting everything, and it made all of those things mean something, right? Like, you know, even the question of like, what happened to the can? You know, everybody always wondered. Now we know.
They even brought the can back.
Well, and again, the way in which all of these, you know, Star Wars, you know, George Lucas always said things rhyme, right? And a lot of this movie rhymed with a lot of what we'd seen in other parts of the Jurassic series, but to use that, then those rhymes as ways to kind of bring this to a close, I think worked really, really well for me personally. And
and even the same way that Dennis died from the Dilophosaurus, then Dodgson dies the same way.
Yep. 100% agree with you. Yeah. No,
so
I
it does
agree.
rhyme. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it just didn't feel like a cheap knockoff to me. It just felt like one of those places where like, oh, we're intentionally referencing ourselves on purpose, you know, but it's like his actions helped kind of set a course for Dennis to die, right? And then his actions set the course for him to die. And so I love that. Well, obviously this movie is huge with the action and effects of the movie. And how did that work for you? Did it look the way you thought it should? Did the action work for you? I mean, we had some major set pieces from, you know, when they're in Malta, or the different chases we had in, of course, the park there at Biosyn. You know, we used the most amount of animatronic dinosaurs here in the Jurassic World films. And so what did you think?
I was really amazed at how well they blended the action, the effects, and then also the practical pieces. You know, using animatronics and puppets. You know, now looking back at it, there are some places where I can clearly tell, okay, that's a puppet. But in the moment in the movie, you can't. I really think that ILM here did such an awesome job of blending the two together. And then of also them being able to keep the momentum going and nothing taking you out of that because of bad effects. In particular, I'm thinking of the chase scene in Malta with the motorcycle, and then, you know, tag teaming with the raptors that are trying to attack them. It could have ended up becoming really like shaky cam, and possibly had some bad effects in the swinging around. But it doesn't. And I have to give them props, especially to, I really enjoyed the scene where they have the dinosaur following Bryce Dallas Howard after she crashes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Like, talk about making you hold your breath. Oops, sorry. Talk about making you hold your breath. I think the effects there were paired so perfectly with the expression on her face, and then her like sinking slowly into the pond and trying to get away and going underwater. It was gorgeous. What did you think?
I thought the movie looked beautiful. One, I thought that Trevorrow made a great choice in choosing the format that they did, because especially like if you see it on IMAX screen, you're filling up the entire screen, and you want this movie to feel big and in your face. So I also thought they chose to film on film, and they went with a lot of really naturalistic lighting. I thought the movie had a very naturalistic feel to it, and there were just some scenes that were absolutely gorgeous in that sense. So when it comes to just the cinematography and everything, and then pairing that with the action and effects that we got, I think were almost perfect. There were only a couple of shots where I thought, oh, that doesn't look as, and partly I think it was the very beginning of the movie, where Owen is riding with the dinosaurs on the plains there, and as they're rounding them up. There are a couple of things in there where it's just like, that's got to be so hard to do with all the movement. But on a whole, I was really impressed by the work in this movie. And then the action, that Malta scene, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I'll give him credit. He pointed this out. It kind of felt like Jurassic Park and a Jason Bourne movie had a baby when it came to that scene. It was fantastic. And then everything else I just felt like looked phenomenal when they were, at Biosin, all the chases with the dinosaurs there, just really, really good work. And then I enjoyed seeing a lot of those animatronic dinosaurs. They're so good with animatronics these days. It's when you can use it, do it, and they did. So I thought that this movie had kind of everything you want from a Jurassic film, which is tons of great action set pieces happening with the dinosaurs, excellent effects, and then on top of that, I thought the movie looked phenomenal. I thought they did a really good job shooting it, and the beauty of the scenes they were choosing with the naturalistic lighting really, really worked. So well done on them. Obviously, the music is a huge part of Jurassic Park. I mean, for me, it was the very first CD I ever bought when I bought my CD player back in the day, and I guess that would have been 1993. So, but of course, Giacchino's back here. And what did you think of his wrap up for the Jurassic series?
The number one thing I was looking for is exactly what he did here. And that was calling back to John Williams' original Jurassic Park themes. It had the one that everyone remembers from the very end of that movie way back in 93. Some things, especially when, like I said, Alan comes on screen. And then even throwing in some music that's not exactly that, but it echoes that a little, is exactly what I think you needed here to also feel like this is all one big whole together, with all 6 movies, and really beautiful music. I mean, I think that Giacchino does such a great job in most things I've ever seen with him doing the music, and he does here too.
Yeah, I really like the score. I think it's he doesn't go overboard too with the references, and I think that's the thing, is he uses the things he created for the Jurassic World series as well as the beauty of what John Williams did, and I think it's a good score. I think it really, and especially in the movie, there's some choices that he made with different things where it's just really soft and beautiful. And it brings to life the scene in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect. So I heartily agree with you. I think he does a great job here, and I think it's a worthy soundtrack for the rest of the series. And so, I think in many ways it just makes you feel like you're watching Jurassic Park. Or Jurassic World, and I love it. I really do. So, Christy, I'm very interested because I feel like we've had mostly just good things to say about Jurassic World Dominion, which is very different than all the critics have. And so, although audiences gave this an A- as a cinema score, so audiences apparently have enjoyed it, and it's made over almost $400 million in
Wow.
worldwide in one weekend. So that's insane. What would you rate Jurassic World Dominion?
Well, I will preface this with I often disagree with whatever the critics say.
Yeah, I find that too.
Yeah. And I did here as well. When I left this movie, I felt a lot of the things that you mentioned as well, of just that it pays homage to what came before it in a nice way. And it's also bringing it into the present with having both casts from Jurassic Park and Jurassic World together in one movie and working so well off of each other. There's not much that I would change. I think that the only thing that kind of got a little confusing for me and didn't relate as much to the other parts of the story was the locust storyline. But otherwise, it generally fits in with the science angle and, with them being larger than a locust we would have ever seen before. So I would give this a 4 out of 5 flaming locusts, because it's got so many beautiful parts going for it and a lot of fun. And then, really, I have to say, with the action, the first time that the T-Rex pops up, I screamed in the theater.
Yeah.
So they got me. And then, like I said, especially with paying homage to what came before with the first trilogy, I left feeling so good about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, and what's funny is we were right before we started recording, I was like, we hadn't talked at all about what we felt about the movie together. So we came in blind as to what each other was thinking, but I'm right there with you. I think this is 4 out of 5. This is 4 out of 5 massive piles of dino no, I'm just kidding. This is 4 out of 5 Velociraptor clone babies, because I mean, the amount of things that this movie was talking about, and I think doing really a good job just trying to make you think about the world we live in and the world we've lived in for the last few years, I think is awesome. But at the same time, I thought this movie was a very good wrap-up to the Jurassic series, and I thought that not only was it that, but I thought it was a movie that Michael Crichton himself would have probably really enjoyed, and that is because this movie was so referential to the types of things that he was talking about in the original Jurassic Park book. Mm-hmm. So I'm 100% with you. I think this is, go see it. Go see it on a huge screen, just like, we said with Top Gun. You won't regret it. It's a great movie with the family as well. And I think this is great stuff. So, well, before we get out of here, Christy, we're going to do what we do pretty much every single week, which is give some recommendations for everyone. So what would you like to recommend everyone this week?
Well, I feel like with this, and especially you and I both loving dinosaurs and Jurassic Park so much, that I had to do something dinosaur related. So actually, this is something that I found out also from my husband, who's fascinated with paleontology. But if you don't know the story of Sue, the largest and most complete Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton found to date, I highly recommend checking out the story of Sue. There's actually a documentary out there called Dinosaur 13, which is about the sad story of the people that originally found Sue. It was named for the woman that found it. And in the documentary, they show that after these people had gone through this amazing discovery, the government then came back and seized all of the items, saying that it was found on federal land and they could no longer take the credit for it. Wow. So since then, I think that possibly things have changed, but I would have to go and look back at what the story has been since the documentary, which came out in 2014. But anyway, so yeah, it's a fascinating story. and really cool to see all the pictures of such a complete T-Rex skeleton for the first time. So
awesome.
check out Dinosaur 13 and the Story of Sue.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to do that. That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, I grew up loving dinosaurs as a kid. I mean, I still love dinosaurs. So that's so neat. Well, I went and did something that I hadn't never done before, which is, I'd recommended the show The Offer a few weeks ago when we were talking about recommendations, and it's all about the making of The Godfather. Well, I've never actually read, or I hadn't actually read the Godfather book, the original book by Mario Puzo, and so I went and did that, and it's fantastic. It's similar to the movie, but there's a lot of stuff, obviously, they couldn't add into the film, and it's well worth your time. So I highly recommend checking out Mario Puzo's The Godfather. But Christy, we're not here in the 602 Club, and maybe people want to talk to you about some Jurassic World or something else. Where would they find you?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Bespin Bell. And then, of course, on Facebook, I often appear over in the Babel Conference. And if you want to check out another show that I do called Sabers and Spells, it is at Sabers and Spells, also on Instagram and Twitter. And we talk about geeky things we don't usually get to cover. We're on the Skywalking Through Neverland Network, Skynet, and that is with my friends Amanda and Teresa. But what about you?
Well, you could find me all over social media under the name MattRushing02. So Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Vero, any of those type of places. You can also find me here on the network when I'm not in the 602 Club, doing a bunch of other shows. I've got The Orb, Literary Treks, Warp 5, Artificial Tango, and Saddle Up. The Orb's about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Literary Treks is the books and the comics of Star Trek. Warp 5 is about Star Trek Enterprise. Artificial Tango is about Star Trek Picard, and then Saddle Up is all about Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And then when I'm not doing that, I've got a couple of shows over on the Nerd Party Network. One is called Owl Post. That's a completed show. I did that with Drea Kaufman, and we talked about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series, one chapter at a time. And then last but not least, Aggressive Negotiations, a Star Wars podcast with John Mills, and I hope you will check it out. But thank you so much for joining us.
And y'all come back now, you hear?
Thank you.